today is defending the university. And basically, I guess it's kind of my reflections on the future of universities and research. Now, the high point of the university was really from the post-war period, the 1940s to the 1980s. It was a period characterized by rapid expansion in higher education, coupled, albeit admittedly patchily, with a real dedication to the value of knowledge and critical thinking. It's a period in which the independent value of learning was highly appreciated. However, since then, as we all know, we have seen a series of crises associated with government policies, attacks on the very premise of education, and the introduction of these kind of really weird narratives about ivory towers. And these crises have largely been replicated across the different national contexts within which at least I have worked. Of course, the timings have differed, but I think the general trends have remained remarkably consistent. And these crises include, I'm just going to list a few of the really obvious ones. The marketization of degree programs, including this explicit requirement that disciplines as well as individual courses are primarily tied or should be primarily tied to marketable skills, economic mobility, and jobs. Then there's increasing pressures to privatize university provision. There's the replacement of tenured or long contracted academic staff with precarious employees or people on short-term contracts or even on teaching only contracts. This sort of led to the sort of Uberification, if you like, of teaching. There's been dramatic increases in forms of academic labor that don't contribute to either research or teaching. I mean, even those who don't have secure contracts are required to play the game. In the UK, this has meant the imposition of the RAE, the Research Assessment Exercise, followed by the REF, Research Excellence Framework, as well as audits of teaching through the Quality Assurance Agency for Higher Education and the National Student Survey. Now, these audits have been replicated in all of the other countries I've worked in. The result has been a continuous and time-consuming audit culture, which includes repeated assessments, the expectation that all academics apply for research funding from national and European research councils, demands to publish or be damned, and the creation of students as customers and their lecturers as course delivery workers. The monetization and the bureaucratization of research has affected everyone within the academy, since the survival of entire disciplines often depends on achieving these really high rankings in the different assessment regimes. Individual scholars and academic departments have found themselves required to justify decisions based on projected results. Multiple committees have been established to manage the process. Annually, hundreds of hours are spent, if you like, preparing the returns. Competition between and within universities have soared. Smaller disciplines, interdisciplinary research, these have proven to be especially vulnerable. These various audits are central components of the new public management regime, requiring universities to become increasingly sensitive to their positions in various league tables. Now, it's well known that bigger universities or large universities have in fact instigated well-funded offices dedicated simply to preparing their league tables and lobbying for success, political lobbying. The metrics used place great weight on entry qualifications, effectively ignoring exit qualifications or the longer term impact of higher education on students and on their communities. Well, next point I want to make is, yeah, the introduction of metrics, often in the name of transparency to both taxpayers and to politicians, purport to measure, regulate, and discipline academic performance, but actually make little sense given the broader aims of pedagogy and knowledge advancement. In effect, academics have become one of the most measured and audited um, uh, characters in modern society. And that's actually a quote from Peter Fleming in his wonderful book called Dark Academia, how universities die. The average hours that a senior academic works is 57 hours a week, and for, in fact, early career scholars, it's up to 100 hours a week. This sort of relentless auditing has meant that time is diverted from the central aim of the university, that is teaching and research. Universities risk becoming part of a sort of education business panopticon. Now, a related issue, strongly related issue, is the ascendancy of business values, primarily quantifiable ones rather than academic values. The emphasis on market shares or market-driven models of university budgeting has meant that educational values have come to be determined by market share as opposed to intellectual criteria. Academic governance, for example, the academic boards or senates, which used to actually, at least in my time, be powerful forums in university planning, have been undermined. University governance is now streamlined to be much more top-down, if you like, management. Now, for academics, all of this has led to a general demoralization and confusion. The central parts of the vocation have been undermined. Teaching is about keeping the customer happy, which means kowtowing to demands for higher grades, and educament. In other words, educational entertainment, while research is like drowned within a tsunami of administrative and evaluative bureaucracy. Well, given high levels of uncertainty, generally, I think it's fair to say that academics have been cowed. It's far easier to simply acquiesce to the demands of neoliberal managerialism than to risk basically careers or by protest. So Homo academicus has become Homo zombicus. Now, I don't want to make out that these are new problems. 2 to 3 decades ago, and here I'm thinking about Bill Redding's The University in Ruins, 1996, Henry Gurok's The University in Change, 2007. So this is 2 to 3 decades ago. They revealed the extent to which the university was being run like a business rather than a public good, with the aim of advancing knowledge and critique. This business model has been characterized as necessary on a number of what I think are actually false grounds, including austerity, taxpayer accountability, political expediency, and an ideological rhetoric about ivory towers, or this kind of misperception that academics are somehow out of touch with the real world. This latter criticism I find really interesting because it's actually quite a new criticism. It was only actually applied to universities from the 1970s. Prior to this time, the term ivory towers did exist. It was usually positive connotation. In other words, it tapped into ancient debates, ancient Greek debates actually, about whether it was better for writers and artists to be inside or outside the polis, or debates about the virtues or otherwise of a contemplative rather than an active life. The almost wholly negative connotation of the term only emerged as a response to Nazism. Individual intellectuals and artists, because of Nazism, had a duty to fight. And by the time the term ivory tower started to refer to universities, again, 1970s, it was almost exclusively a term of abuse. To be in an ivory tower could never be a virtue. Now, as I know everyone here knows, the ivory tower critique of universities has been most scarily espoused in the US today, where research has been targeted not on the grounds of quality, but simply because of content. This is not unique to the US. We just have to think about the dismantling of the Central European University in 2018. But it has fallen, I think, to previously unimaginable depths in the US recently, where simply including concepts such as race, slavery, gender, inequality, trauma, protest, etc., in the titles of research projects has resulted in grants being cancelled by the federal government without warning and without consultation. This has been accompanied by attacks on DEI, diversity, equity or equality, and inclusion initiatives, and of course, the criminalization of student protests. So-called controversial beliefs, such as greenhouse emissions, climate change, LGBTQ identities, critical race theory, have been forbidden by state legislation. Now, resisting such political intervention by state authorities is crucial, not only for scholars and for the survival of the university itself, but also for the world in which we live. Such attacks on universities are attempts to destroy the fundamental principle of intellectual freedom, which since classical Athens has been crucial for social and scientific advancement. So what I'm saying here is that what is now at risk is the very idea of academic freedom. I have a wonderful quote here by Eve Darian Smith in a great book. I really recommend it, called Policing Higher Education, came out last year. She says, attacks on academic freedom are emblematic of a destabilized world order unfolding on a global scale, yet fought in the everyday experiences of teachers and students inside lecture halls, research labs, and seminar classrooms. I think it's, though, and I agree with her, it's a red herring. It's one we often hear, but I think it's a red herring to suggest that academic freedom means the right of academics to say whatever they want. Eve Kernosvisky pointed out, I'm just going to quote her here. She points out that academic freedom means the collective freedom of the faculty to set the norms of academic debate, free from interference by administrators, governing bodies, or the state. As such, it is very, very different from free speech. Historian, public intellectual Joan Scott explains that free speech makes no distinction about quality. Academic freedom does. Are all opinions equally valid in the university classroom? Does creationism trump science in the biological curriculum if half the students believe in it? Do both sides carry equal weight in the training of future scientists? Are professors being ideological when they refuse to accept biblical accounts as scientific evidence? And Chernovsky argues that the university needs to continue to insist on certain collective established norms of relevance, coherence, and evidence. These norms are neither static, transparent, unproblematic, nor uncontested. However, they are altered not at the whim of the individual scholar, but through the collective elaboration of new objects, methods, and states. Now, unfortunately, though, again, as I'm sure everyone here in this room is very aware, the floodgates to increased political intervention into the university have already opened. As we have seen in recent months in the US, the federal government is exerting direct power over staffing, research, and curriculums. Some universities, and here UK example would be Oxford, are investing in hedge funds, opening the doors to unregulated financial industries, which use their power to broker further expansion into university management and student services. And here, the most, I think, egregious example would be unregulated, highly profitable student housing. Universities are making pacts with, if not the devil, then the likes of the Koch industries. This is the second largest privately held multinational company with stakes in particularly in oil and fossil fuels. Billionaire Charles Koch gives hundreds of millions of dollars worldwide to universities, to think tanks, to institutes, academic institutes, although with strings attached. So the private thing aspect here is the strings attached, which threaten withdrawal of all funds if they question deregulation and free market fundamentalism. There's a really wonderful book. I've actually forgotten the authors, but it's called Free Speech and Koch Money, Manufacturing a Campus Culture War. This is only one. Ralph Wilson and Isaac Kamola are the authors. This is only one of the many ways private citizens attempt to control university institutions. Such unprecedented political intervention has been made possible by the decline in trust of experts of all varieties, including academic ones. There's a really terrifying statistic that the majority of Republicans today believe that universities are actually bad for America. Only 1/4 trust scientists, and only 1/3 trust doctors and medical sciences. So I guess it's a legitimate question to ask, well, why should America worry us? Why should American trends worry us? I actually think that we actually really do need to pay attention to what's happening in the US because of its major role globally in educational policy. What happens in the US has a tendency, a regrettable tendency, to migrate elsewhere. What happens there can happen here. Globally, we know that suspicion of academics is on the rise, and not only for those working in the arts and humanities. So there's some really great work by scholars in STEM subjects about the increasing risks of short-termism, which is actually integral to business-led liberal managerial approaches. And they argue that it promotes safe research rather than critical, innovative forms. It also opens up all disciplines to state scrutiny and intervention. So defending the university is an important task. And there are, I think, obviously many, many defenses. Personally, I think that the more instrumentalist approaches to higher education really fail to capture its full worth. Nevertheless, it is true that university learning is a way for economies to grow and for individuals to improve their material, physical, and psychological well-being. Universities do enable people to develop skills that will result in increased individual productivity, improved industrial innovation, economic growth. This neoliberal defense, it is a neoliberal defense of universities, which has truth in it, maintains that students are responsible for their own employability, showcasing their ability to negotiate market competitiveness by making astute consumer choices. But I actually do think it's a fairly weak defense, although it's true. Now, of course, students learn knowledge and skills that will be used professionally and productively. The convergence of education with the reproductive needs of society is important. But I really think I'd like to stress that higher education is a process, not a product. In other words, knowledge is intrinsically as well as instrumentally worthwhile. Its mission is transforming its members, students, and communities throughout their lives. Higher education teaches people to think, judge, develop a better understanding of themselves and the world, contributing to the life of their communities, both locally and globally. In short, transforming the world. And in an era of fake news, rising authoritarianism, war, global financial, environmental health crises, the need for kinds of critical thinking that come from higher education are more imperative than ever. It was actually a fact that H.G. Wells was referring to when he quipped that human history becomes more and more a race between education and catastrophe. The university's very existence is increasingly precarious. As Judith Butler, the philosopher, put it, it is quite incredulous that the ability to think, to work with language, and images, and to read, to make sense, to intervene, to take apart, to formulate evaluative judgments, and even to make the world anew is now requiring a defense. In 2023, after the Central European University earned the distinction of being the first university to be hounded out of a European country, its president and rector, Shalini Randira, announced that, quote, "We learned that the university is a fragile institution, that it is very dependent on the conditions under which it operates in order to retain its autonomy as an institution and its values of academic freedom." But what I really like about his quote is he adds, after that, he adds a hopeful comment, observing that the sustained campaign by the right-wing Hungarian government also reminded us that the university is a powerful institution, because were it not for that fact, an authoritarian regime would not spend so much time and energy. I think it's lovely. I think it really is, though, an important reminder that a vibrant and healthy democracy needs universities. They are essential if we want to create a citizenship that can look beyond the pursuit of profit to notions of the common good, in expansive, that is, looking beyond self-interest and local problems, as well as effective ways. I think this is the hopeful message that university leaders need to heed in times of war, mass rearmament, nuclear threats, climate change, threats to democracy. Our communities need critique, or the ability of ourselves, our students, and our communities to think against the obvious in order to find solutions to societal problems. Now, I'm going to be clear here. I think it's really important not to, I'm not sure this is a word, catastrophize. Politicians and powerful, rich individuals have always attempted to mold universities for their own ends, precisely because they understand the importance of controlling how people think. But universities have also never been static institutions. They are continually reborn, as John Dewey, the most famous, most influential, I should say, American educational thinker of the first half of the 20th century put it. Even in the modern historical period, we have seen remarkable shifts in higher education, in many cases for the better. Here, a few examples. I'm thinking about the opening up of universities to women in the late 19th century, expansionist policies in the mid 20th century, which welcomed working class people as students, the invention of new disciplines, sociology, anthropology, computer science, informational systems, organizational psychology, to take just a few, 4 examples. It's important, therefore, I think, to remind ourselves that even those initiatives were highly contested and fought against by powerful opponents. Progressive change is difficult. My favorite quote, I hope I get this right, my favorite quote is from the Harvard professor Louis Menand in his really interesting book, The Marketplace of Ideas, where he writes that trying to reform the contemporary university is like trying to get on the internet with a typewriter. But if anyone can make a difference, it is the rectors, the vice chancellors, the managers, and other university leaders working in their various roles to democratize governance, offer fair employment contracts, encourage mass inclusion, promote academic freedom, and build collegiality and community. If we really believe that universities are public institutions committed to the common good and to foster social responsibility, social inquiry, and knowledge, the fundamental question, I think, for us today is, to whom are universities socially responsible? To students, to staff, local communities, wider society, international community, future generations, or to current politicians, billionaire donors, multinational corporations? Just to quote Henry Gouros in 2021, he wrote, "The road to authoritarianism begins when societies stop questioning themselves. And when such questioning stops, it is often because intellectuals have either become complicit with such silence or actively promote it." Rectors and other university leaders have, I think, a real opportunity here to create universities where this does not happen. I really believe that we are at a critical historical juncture. Now is the time to nurture critical pedagogies and reimagine the university for the 21st century. Thanks. That's all my talk for today. Thank you.